Hello, welcome to the Old Man Orange Podcast. I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Tunnigan.
We are continuing our fun journey of our preemptive, look forward to of the Mario movie by doing Mario March, and going through all kinds of stuff. And we thought that, it'd be kind of a fun thing that would be different, like you don't really think of, but it's one of those things that brings back nostalgic joy / seeing, commercials from other places. Is really taking a look at all those Mario commercials from literally the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s, and kind of going back and watching through those, which it's a process that I learned in doing so. You could literally spend like over a day and you still might not even catch up on all of them.
Well, it's one of those things at first, when you first pitched that idea, I was like, I don't know. I think it's more like, I think it'd be more interesting if we covered like, a weird manga or oddball game or something. But I was thinking about it, like, actually, he's right, because you can kind of get a view at this franchise developing, like, just through a couple of like, well, not a couple, a lot, but like through a bunch of 30-second ads that span all over the world. And you can kind of see each country's approach. And I'm not going to lie, I'm mostly focused on America and a little bit of Japan. And then I looked into other countries, but it's kind of interesting just seeing the way each country or the way each generation, they try to perceive this character and franchise.
Oh yeah, I know that's the thing that's almost the most interesting thing about it. That's why I said, I feel like even though like, we kind of almost just scratched the surface at looking through these, kind of reminding ourselves of the ones that we watched, growing up, and then seeing some of the overseas ones and so on. And as time has gone on, I've sat down and watched these kind of like commercials here and there where someone on YouTube puts together a nice playlist of stuff. But yeah, it's just kind of going back, and it's so fun to check it out in just the different ways, one of the interesting ones is with Japan. They do a lot of cool claymation commercials, I noticed. And that goes, literally from like 80s all the way up to 2000. So they'll have a cool claymation one in there, and ones like the Super Mario RPG one's a good example of that. But even Super Mario World had one, and just, cool, that kind of stuff that you never see anymore.
Well, it's interesting because it looks like Japan always, maybe all their ads were like in-house. Maybe within Nintendo of Japan had its own marketing team or something like that, and they were all in-house, possibly because they seem like very true to whatever Mario is, where America kind of changes and goes through phases with their marketing throughout the years. You know what I mean? Like, it always just seems like, this is Mario, here's the sound effects, here's the music. And then I think eventually they did reach a point where Mario of America, it's like, we don't need to try to be edgy. We don't need to try to be like, attitude era or any of that kind of shit. We can just, people know what Mario is by now. He's the Mickey Mouse of games. We don't got to put that. Maybe you could sell a funny ad here and there, but I think they held back on that as it went on.
Yeah, it's funny though how long the Attitude Era really goes on for, because I was noticing it like it almost appears right with Mario World. And it literally goes all the way up to like mid 2000s, like that's like that Attitude Era. Like I kind of forgot, because it's like I remember some of those commercials for like literally like late GameCube, even early Wii, and those ones still carry the Attitude Era, like in a sense. It's a little bit different, but there's perfect examples like the Game Boy Advance ones. There's one where it's for Super Mario World 2. Yoshi's Island. And there's this one commercial where this mom and her like daughter come up to the street, and then Yoshi's just stand there like in like a, like a costume kind of suit, like if you're in a theme park. And the little girl's like, wow, he's really cute. And the mom like clicks the little alarm lock on the car, and it goes beep, beep. And then Yoshi goes, wow, and throws an egg at it and just explodes the car. And then the mom just stand there like, oh, what? And then the commercial fight goes like, I was like, it's Yoshi's World on Game Boy Advance. He's got precision aiming. No, like almost like something like, so don't piss him off.
That sounds like it almost sounds more like an ad that would have came out like in 95 or something, because that's when like the mascot costumes were really big, just to throw in there. Like, you get it, whatever. You think we're gonna actually put money into the costume or CG this shit? Fuck that. But then there's like the ones like, there's like I think the first one, or one of the most weirdest ones I came across, is back before they had the NES, back when they had like Atari ports for like Mario Brothers. So you had like who I thought first was supposed to be Mario, but it's actually supposed to be a Luigi, and they got like some dopey song like, "Oh, where is Mario?" You know, like Luigi's like stammering around like, you know, this like this sewer, and he's getting attacked by, you know, Koopa Troopas and like crabs and stuff. It almost ends with him implying he dies. So, but it was actually had pretty good production quality for what it was.
Well, those are always the really interesting ones, because all I think about is when you see like those 80s commercials and so on like that. I mean, that's literally probably somebody like in their 40s and 50s from that time period is going like, okay, we got to figure out what this is. Like, you just like when you think about that, it's like literally picture like your grandpa trying to piece together a commercial at that time period.
Yeah, and I guess that's the thing that's interesting, because that's what a lot of the Americans ones were. They were like, all right, how are we gonna make this shit speak to the kids? It's like an Italian guy, and he's in a mushroom world or some shit. I don't fucking know. In Japan's like, I just throw it out there. We get the kids, we get the generation. We know what they want, you know. In America, it kind of starts off kind of apprehensive. Well, it's a kids thing, so I guess we should approach it like a kids thing. And then it's like the kids are getting a little older. They're getting a little bit more aware. So it seems to be kind of like the first couple, like up to Mario World, like, you know, it's all like, fun and games and all, like, it's a toy, kids, come on. Then the Super Nintendo comes out, and there's the ad like, get ready for the Super Nintendo. It's like an industrial building, and then a couple of like, kids that like, they look like live action versions. The Burger King kids come in, and then they're just like, all these TVs, whoa, what? They're in like those MTV like Dutch angle zoom ins and all that kind of shit. And then like, whoa, doing that shit, playing the game like Mario World, one of the hardest games yet, so challenging, so tough. You need Super Nintendo power for the, and then like, so then it starts off kind of like, okay, it's a little bit more like, it's being a little bit more like kind of edgy, but not like that much. But then you get to Nintendo 64, and that's where it goes like, okay, the kid just got his first like part-time job, and he thinks he knows how the world works now. And now we're going to have like some kind of a bunch of kids monologuing over Mario 64 footage. Like, we will not be controlled. We will have no limits. We know what true freedom is. Like this kind of shit. Like, sounds like they're part of a fucking cult.
No, where it seems like it's almost like, give it like a Malcolm X speech feel, but it's about like the future of video games in the N64.
Well, there was like, I remember there was like a super pretentious ad, and I think it was by Levi. Levi's did a lot of super pretentious ads. They show these art school shots of like young people like running with like a flaming whatever, or like waving a flag, like a young couple kissing. It's black and white, contrast is way up, and it'll just be like, a speech from FDR, or a speech maybe from Malcolm X or someone, and then it would just be like, go forth, Levi's, and then like, it was like, I'm just thinking like, what a bunch of shit. Like, oh, they did the same thing to us back in the day, but it was Mario, so it seemed cool.
When I picture Levi's, really what I pictured, like a commercial for Levi's should just be like this wide shot of this old gold panner just bent over, like panning through the lake and so on. Just like you hear the sounds of nature, the stream going by, babbling brook and all that stuff. And then he just kind of leans back, scratches his ass, spits some tobacco and keeps going at it and be like, Levi's, know where you came from. Because it's like, let's be honest, apparently that's all whenever I think of Levi's, I'm like, that's what gold panners wear. You know what I mean? Like, that's where it comes from. Don't try to think more than that. Like that's just what it is. It's supposed to be the pants of blue collar, but no blue collar person wears them anymore.
Turns around, it's like Sam Elliott with like an 8-pack, like Levi's, just like... But like,
who's rubbing your dick tonight?
Exactly. What you doing tonight? Wait, don't answer. We both already know.
Levi's, it's wrong to wear underwear with them.
There's
Levi's, prevent the swamp ass.
Or just embrace it.
Be one with it.
Hard eye contact with the camera. No, there's the back in the Mario 64 one, there's one where there's like the, kind of pretentious, like, we will have no limits. We will go forth into the future, not knowing what will come, but we will embrace it. As you see someone like playing like, like the ice level or whatever from Mario 64. But then you have like one where it is the total like, whoa, dude, Mario, what's going on? And he has like the Tim Roth from the beginning of Pulp Fiction haircut. I don't know what you call it, but where it's like split apart like this, and he's putting on the most fake like Brooklyn accent. Yo, Mario, what's this over here? Whoa, we are high. Oh man, that is freaky. What?
The classic one where it's like, we just discovered that with green screen we can put somebody into any footage.
Yeah, like I like to imagine that kid in that ad wasn't just like, he wasn't like, yo man, I love video games, bro. I'll do anything to be in a Mario game, bro. I like to imagine it was just some guy like, I will take this job. I need anything. What does the video gamer sound like? I think I got it. Yo, bro, I like video games. Yes, that is it. Let's do this. Let's make this magic happen. I like to imagine something like that. Like as soon as they said cut, like, oh, look out. Broadway, here I come.
Well, yeah, that's probably definitely true. He's an actor. But it's one of those ones, the Attitude Generation voice, I think, is a mixed match between a Brooklyn accent and a surfer California accent fused together. All in Ninja Turtles, realistically, but you combine those together, and that's what the 90s Attitude Era is. A lot of times that's probably why sometimes I even think my accent gets kind of changed up, because a lot of times I always think it comes from watching too many Martin Scorsese movies, but it is one of those ones, like those fusion of the two together is really what kind of creates it.
The one, yeah, I guess another thing is there's that period where like, how are we going to try and there's sometimes some of the ones that seemed confused of what it was they were selling. And they already got partway through of building the set or something. Like, well, we're here. And I remember the Mario 64 one, the American one, because it starts off, they're in a creepy, very creepy, like something wicked comes this way type of like theme park. And then there's like, come this way to the most wildest ride if you dare. And after they pass by, there's a Wario like gypsy fortune teller thing, and then like all these other creepy stuff there. And then it's just like, Mario Kart 64, what? And that's the thing. I think a lot of directors, a lot of commercial like directors or something, or people just fresh out of high school, fresh out of film school or whatever, just got done watching like a lot of Tool videos in Eraserhead, because at some point they have the zoom in on it with the Dutch angles, and people just do like, whoa, like shaking their head really fast, So I'm pretty sure that was like something that was in the water at the time.
Oh, well, that's just the ultimate 90s thing is tons of cuts, ridiculous angles, hard contrast, everybody's almost feeling like electrified, smoke in the background. There's always like that. Like, it looks like you just walked into like a bar that had everybody smoking and everything like that. But, it's a bunch of kids.
Yeah, but I feel like at the time I just took that as the aesthetic. But retroactively, I think it's like they had to see like one or two movies do that, and enough people like, whoa, that's really cool. Kind of like how enough people around that time saw Pulp Fiction and they suddenly want to make their own Pulp Fiction. I'm guessing it was something kind of like that, but all they got was a couple of ads at Nintendo, like, all right, let's try to David Lynch this shit.
Yeah, well, I think it's also the mixed match between grunge rock music videos and hip hop videos, and
that too.
That kind of whole look to everything is really what like gives a lot of that style and so on.
Well,
but it is what
like
makes
every Tool video too.
Oh yeah, well, Tool's like the definitive, like, we put the most amount of time and effort into our music videos.
Yeah.
So it's got all that kind of stuff, but that's just part of like the 90s kind of whoa kind of feel right there. And even just like, I just always love, because like the second that Sega comes out with their Attitude thing, Nintendo's like, double down on that. We could be more Attitude Era than Sega ever thinks.
Well, it's funny because the Sega one, because there's the Mario All-Stars that came with the Super Nintendo ad, and they show like one like dirty long-haired hippie in a Sonic shirt in the middle of class, and like a teacher being kind of like asking all these complicated questions, and then he gets to, and the whole class but him knows, and then it gets down to like, okay, what's better, Super Nintendo or Sega? Sega comes with no games, which they all came with Sonic the Hedgehog at the point, but whatever, no games.
Yeah. Or Altered Beast if it's even older.
Exactly. Or Super Nintendo, which comes with 4 games, like Mario All-Star. And the kids are, you know, and it's like everyone's like, don't be fucking stupid now, kids. I almost feel like that ad is like the precursor to like the Jeremy music video. Like the next day, that kid went and cut all his hair, and then the Jeremy video happens from there. He went from beating from sticks out in the woods, then came back to school the next day. We know it happens from there.
Jeremy's broken from Sega.
Exactly. Jeremy was a Sega kid until he got shamed
by his richer Nintendo friends. Let's be honest, that's what it all is. That's what I always kind of feel. It's like Sega always kind of had it was like $50 cheaper, and that's a lot of the reason why I think more people had started Sega Genesis at that time period, because everybody's parent went to the store and said, $200 for a Super Nintendo or $150 for a Genesis. Guess what? He's getting a Genesis.
And for a while, I think they also, I mean, maybe they're aware of it, but to me, it always comes across like, oh, we didn't know they were going to do that. And like, you know, because Sega did the thing like, all right, be $50 cheaper, and we'll throw Sonic the Hedgehog in with it. Yeah. What? Yeah, we're going to do that. Like, all right, we'll see if this fucking happens. And then it works. And then Nintendo's like, what? Those motherfuckers. No, we're throwing Mario World in it. Fuck those guys, you know? So
that was America that made that decision too, because Japan's like, no, you do not throw a Sonic the Hedgehog in there. You sell it separately. You know, and Tom Kalinski's just like, no. We need shit to sell with Sega. Come on, like, we're losing out here. Like, Altered Beast is just not cutting it enough. It's fun, but it's not cutting it.
Yeah. So it's one of those things where, I always thought that like the Nintendo was a little bit more passive. I always thought it was like Sega, like chucking shit at Nintendo. And then once in a while, Nintendo would be like, okay, whatever. Here's Sonic shoes, and like the bottom tier of the Donkey Kong, like scoreboard or whatever, like in Donkey Kong Country, or you know, they're like that other ad right there. I didn't really, I know there's more there, but I noticed Sega was the one always being more louder, screaming, fuck you, and Nintendo being like, Nintendo just being kind of like, just keeps on doing what they're doing, you know?
Well, it does always have that thing where, because I love the living daylights out of Sega, but like, you know, Nintendo's sort of like the professional, and Sega's just like even though Sega's literally just as around technically longer than Nintendo as far as making games, but like Sega kind of comes in with that almost like fresh, like, you know, we're gonna just give it like this almost like a kid out of high school who hasn't been humbled yet sort of try, and Nintendo's just like just wait it out, it's all gonna work out. Yeah, we kind of fumbled the ball with Mortal Kombat. We get it. Okay. But when Nintendo goes attitude, Nintendo goes hardcore attitude, and just goes, see, yeah. At the end of the day, people want fucking Donkey Kong.
Or it's that whole thing about, you know, like, just wait you see. Wait till the Sega Saturn comes out, bro. Just wait you see. Like, yeah, all right, cool. What Sonic game's coming out for? Oh, we'll worry about that later, you know? So,
well, and that's the same thing. It goes back to like the Sega Genesis thing. Like, literally, once again, you know, parents go to the store. He wants a Sega Saturn. PlayStation's $100 left. He's getting a PlayStation.
Yeah.
Well, you know, because a lot of times that's the thing. I always hate when people go like, oh, you know, it's because the games are better or whatever like that. Like, it's like, no, I know 100%. That's always the reason. It's whatever the price is dictates everything just about.
Yeah, well, it's weird, and we'll get back to like the ads in a second. But I know that I think of that three-way war of the next generation, I think PlayStation was the winner. But at the same time, I feel like retrospectively, I think retroactively, I think Nintendo's remembered more fondly. I know there's good PS1 games and people still like PS1, but I feel like Nintendo 64, at least from what I hear, most people are more nostalgic for those.
No, there's
majority
weird.
of it.
There's the strangest thing I feel like I've seen the last couple of years is there's so much hatred for the N64. Like all of a sudden, like people
Really?
just go like, "Oh, it's got the stupidest controller,"
I'm hearing
like
that, but yeah,
the
game-wise,
games
though.
all suck for it. I don't know why people even liked in the first place. And a lot of times I would always just comment back. I'm like, "Well, you just had to be there, or grow up with it." And then it's a different experience. Go, "Oh, I was there." I'm like, I bet you weren't saying that then. Like when I was on the playground in the '90s. The N64 was the prized possession to have. That always sort of was. Like PlayStation was, and don't get me wrong, I love PlayStation 1. Like that's my favorite PlayStation of them all. And it does it like in the long run, there is like, pure amazing games that came from that section. Well, I mean, there's always amazing games from every system. I don't care what it is. But yeah, it's just so I think some people it's just like it's the punch. It's like kind of the thing. It's like it's the cool hipster thing to do now is to hate on N64.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll be honest. I haven't been paying a lot of attention to Twitter in a while. I haven't been on Twitter barely, other than the link you send me for StreamYard. So that's when I use Twitter. But but I guess it could be one of those things where everything kind of goes through its ways. I remember just maybe 4 or 5 years ago, if I was wearing an N64 shirt in public, like, oh, bro, like GoldenEye, Mario 64, whatever, Bomberman 64, not that latter, not as frequent, but still,
Yeah.
It'd be one of those things. But now, maybe
Bumble.
Yeah, Buck Bumble, mischief makers, fucking mischief makers, bro.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like Grant Al says, I think still like anything, the majority of the people are still pro N64. It's just there's a couple fucks out there that think they're better than the world, and they just have to sort of say it, But that's almost like it's the weird thing. I feel the PlayStation, Saturn, and N64 is almost gonna be the misunderstood era of gaming, because I think it's one of those generations that if you weren't there for it, it's really hard to properly understand it like retrospectively, I mean, it's almost kind of equivalent to the way that Atari 2600 is, like if you didn't play those games kind of growing up, I could just see as a kid, you'd be like, what the hell's up with the system? It's like, he's like, I thought Space Invaders was already old in the arcade, but then you play like the Space Invaders version on that thing, and it like makes it feel even more like dumbed down and whatnot. But it's like, if you just didn't play them, it's like, it is kind of hard to explain that like kind of era to people why it was such a big deal.
Well, like even like Atari, for instance, like I respect Atari, but I wasn't really. We had an Atari. Well, my brother had an Atari, but he never plugged it in. Once he got his NES, and by then I was really young, so we never really played the Atari. We just kind of played the NES and whatever we got, move it up from there. And so, I mean, if I wouldn't play the Atari now, I'm not sure if I'd have a lot of fun with it. There's probably a couple games I'd like, I'm sure, but it's one of those. I understand where it's the starting point and moving forward from there. And I know it's not the starting point for consoles. I'm just saying for like moving forward up. But I think it's kind of just like anything, like Nintendo, NES. That was the next step up. And if you look back and play certain games, some games did not age that well, and you did have to kind of be there for it. But then Super Nintendo kind of had everything fine-tuned and good by then. So you kind of got it. And then we move on to the 3D, the next step. And now we're learning from scratch again. So a lot of those games would have trouble, and not trouble, but like a lot of it's later over here. A lot of those games would be kind of like starting from scratch again and trying to learn like a new tool essentially. So I think a lot of people kind of forget that, but it is what it is. But as far as the ads go, if we could trace back a minute, you were talking about a lot of the claymation ones for Japan. Japan always seemed to be pretty on note, like theme with the Mario games, like Mario in America, the ads kind of changed with the times until I think roughly around like there's still some probably edginess in like early 2000s, but around there is where I think like it's Mario. People know it's Mario. Well, who are we trying to fool? We could just say it's Mario and people get it. Where Japan seemed very consistent, like family fun Mario the whole way through, but we're also going to put a lot of production into the ads.
Yeah, well, because they make it feel very kind of almost to give it more of an artsy kind of feel to it. The other thing I noticed in Japan, like a lot of the commercials they'll have these commercials that it literally reminds me of, the best way to say it is it reminds me of The Wizard, where there'll be like 4 or so kids out on like an adventure, and these kids are out journeying around. Like literally, it feels like they're out catching Pokemon. They're just out in the middle of nowhere. Either they're out in the middle of a field or they're out there like hitchhiking on the side of the road. Like I can't remember. There was one where I think it was the Mario Land one for Japan, and it had this like song in the background that was like so 80s, and I think like it was like when I feel alone. It was weird because they weren't Japanese kids. I think they literally got like a couple of like they were like kind of very American. Like they were definitely trying to make it feel like it was like Goonies or something like that.
Or some shit.
Yeah, these kids were all standing out. And there's like this like they all got their Game Boys and so on. I think it was a Mario Land commercial, but I think it was also advertising like Tetris and a couple other ones too at the same time. It's like you're never alone when you got your Game Boy in your pocket. Mario Land.
Like they're not hanging out. They're not hanging out or playing together. They're just playing. They're on an adventure together. But they're like, all right, guys, let's all stop and just play Game Boy by ourselves. No one brought a link cable.
Yeah, while we're hitchhiking too, because I think that's what they were doing. But like Japan has a lot of those ones where it's that classic Pokemon style where it's a bunch of 10-year-olds out on an adventure. Because I think I mean that's like how it is in America, but nobody ever advertises it that way to them. But it is that classic thing that like when you're a 10-year-old, that's what you think about is you're going out on your adventure, whether it be old school, you're going out on your bikes, and you got your clubhouse out in the woods, and you're dressing up like ninjas and sneaking around at night and so on like that. That kind of stuff. And I feel Japan captures that there where it like in the American ones, it's more like, yeah, they got to throw something like ridiculous in there and make video games like, okay, very exciting as this, but that just the people that don't play video games, they go, it's not that exciting. I've seen my kid play. He just there like a monk, concentrated, focused. Like, how can we like up the ante on this? Like video games should feel like the Game Boy's flying around the room and he's got to catch it. He's jumping and dodging and all kinds of stuff like that. Or like, even like, I think of like, that Mario RPG commercial with the old man in it, and the old man's like, it's almost like the old man like woke up in the middle of the night and took like Tommy's fucking like Mario RPG and it flipped on like kind of, and like all of a sudden it just started playing in the background and he started having visions and cracked his back and had some like literally like World War I flashbacks.
Grandpa looks like he's having like some like he's just like he has Alzheimer's and he's confused and he's like confusing this game for his like actual life events because he's all like, let me tell you. And then Mario came in. I think that was also a bit of the joke because like, let me tell you, it was all peaceful in the Mushroom Kingdom. It's like slow. It's like there's like a shot of like he's like all like his legs are all spread, camera like angled up, looking up at Grandpa from between his legs. He's hunched over, like, let me tell you kids some shit. And he's going on. He's all like, that's when Mario and his longtime enemy Bowser teamed up with a marshmallow that threw lightning. And then like, all of a sudden this is like, and then it came down from the ice tornado, just saying all this crazy shit. And they do the 90s like, like face shaking thing. And then like, whoa, bro, Grandpa's freaky.
Yeah, there's like,
and then you cut to the Japanese one. It's just like some like claymation, like piranha plants all singing, and like a nice like claymation Mario walking through Brooklyn. Like, hey, that's nice.
Yeah, exactly. Like that was one of those ones there. I just loved how that kind of went, and just like I said, Grandpa just like absorbed like the power of Mario RPG in the middle of the night, and it's almost commercial. Just sounds like, remember, kids, don't do drugs.
We gave Grandpa some PCP and let him play this game.
Yeah, now the FBI's after him, just like the arcade ads always told you.
Fuck around, find out, kids.
I was gonna say, was another interesting one I did see was there was this one from Brazil for Mario Kart 64. It was like, and this one is actually translated because that's the only downfall is like you watch a lot of the ones from other countries. And you're like, I bet you this is great if somebody put some subtitles on it probably, and I knew what was going on. But this Brazil one actually had the subtitles on it and whatnot. And there was this hip kid just stand up and be like, yeah, what? I go out and I go racing, and whatnot, throw some items, battle some friends and whatnot. And let me tell you one thing. Also, you get to pick up the ladies. And I was like, oh shit, Brazil's like way ahead of the curve. Like they knew the Mario Kart secret of like, that's how you pick up girls.
This is pre-Fast and Furious.
Let's be honest, it is Brazil, so. But yeah, it's just on this point. It's like, hey, what's up? Even though like the people like they both those kids look like I don't believe those kids are in Brazil. Like
No.
nobody is that fair skinned in Brazil. Well, I guess unless they're Nazis, but
Like
I always
Grandpa
forget
Hans
that,
or some shit.
you forget that so many people left Germany and so on and went down to South America. As I said, that's how you get Pablo Escobar, where he has like his two greatest idols was John Lennon and Adolf Hitler.
Okay, what's your grandpa's name? Klaus. All right. Yeah, it's all starting to click together.
But no, that one was kind of a neat one. That was the only Brazil commercial I remember running across. It was just saw one Mexico commercial as well too, because for the majority of them they're always America, Japan, England, America, Japan, France.
The Canadian one was in French for the Mario.
Yeah, the Canadian one was just like, it's like French Canadian, but it's the half-ass version of the American. So I hate to say it like that, but that's always how those Canadian ones were. They weren't like, there was never anything original going on in them.
Well, I'm learning Dutch right now, so whenever a Dutch one would come on, I'd stop and try and see how many words I can pick out. And there's like full sentences, not always, but there's the German and the Netherlands one, where they had CG models of the characters looking into the camera, talking while driving. And I don't know what they were saying, but I know Donkey Kong said, like, at some point, Wario said wonderful, but Donkey Kong definitely said my bananas, which, I mean,
my
ich banan. It's ich banan. It's not hard to figure out, or mine banan, or whatever. So,
yeah. So yeah, you got those ones there, and so and actually, there's another interesting one. Is Spain had some random ass commercial from I think it was Mario 64, but it was done in the same or a similar style where it was a milk commercial at the same time, but for whatever Spain's like Yoo-hoo kind of milk thing, with like different flavors, chocolate, strawberry, and all that kind of stuff. But it was kind of like that style, like but. It was all in Spanish, but it kind of had that feeling like, hey, get yourself some milk and some Mario 64. The party's going to be hard tonight.
You're going to get all... Don't be a fucking pussy. Have some strawberry milk and play Mario Party.
I'm going to get Yoo-hooed up tonight.
There was another one, ones we watched a little before start recording, which is definitely that 90s, like late 90s, early 2000s era type of ads you'd see. The Mario Tennis 64 ones. Those ones,
yes.
Where it's like there's one where it's like two of the most, basically like two yuppie tennis bros that look like, the villains out of an 80s comedy. And they're walking like, can you believe those freaks? Who let them on the court? I know. And then all of a sudden you see like one of their cars like just stomped on, like it was a nice sports car stomped on, like, oh, I'm sorry to see that. And then it's just, you see someone off like, oh, ladies, walks off the other direction. It's like dinosaurs are sore losers. Like, well, he's not technically a dinosaur, but but there's that part where he has the hose going right into like, a fucking like to a porta potty.
Yeah, well, they got those yuppie guys again, and they're drinking out of a drinking fountain and whatnot, and be like, plumbers are more losers. And then it shows like this like footage going on where it's following this pipe along, and it goes past the other people of the country club, and it keeps going and going, and all of a sudden it ends up literally like a construction site, and there's these guys like it's got it hooked up to like a porta potty there. There's all these like almost like bodybuilder looking guys come there who probably just had like 6 cheeseburgers with fries and a milkshake right beforehand.
And just like and then you see the guy, his mouth and face and like chest is covered in green. He's like, oh, refreshing or some shit like that. And then like
and this guy looks like a Tom Cruise stand-in pretty much.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise you the least bit if you look this guy up. Like, oh yeah, he did some stand-in work on like Eyes Wide Shut or something, or World's End or War of the Worlds. But and then then there's another one though. This is one of the ones that seemed like this is definitely that Attitude Era kind of ad, but at the same time, it's also for like the weirdest game because, okay, you can try to paint Mario as kind of this edgy thing. And if you were to do that, I can understand why you'd go like Smash Brothers, which we'll cover that one eventually, or like Mario Kart, okay. But Mario World 2 Yoshi's Island is like the most wholesome, most like child friendly Mario game up to that point, I feel like. So that's the one where they have like this super like Ren and Stimpy level gross ad where it's like you just see this fat guy just eating. Like, do you think you could eat as much as Yoshi? And just this guy just like wolfing down food and like belching and burping as he does so, just food all over his face, just shit coming out the side of his mouth. And then it's like, they show like his shirt unbuttoning and everyone around is looking. And he's just like, and he has like a little bit of whipped cream on his finger and just the most gross over the top fashion. He just goes like that. Then all of a sudden like, has a grumble. Like, oh, and then like you see everybody and there's like a explosion noise, just food and like sludge goes everywhere on everybody. It's like, yep, he fucking died. Now go play Mario World or like Yoshi's Island. It's interesting because when you look at enough of them, like, because it is just kind of, it almost looks like a child growing. Like the point where the child is all innocent, the child starts to get into like more like, okay, I don't just like Winnie the Pooh anymore. Now I also like Street Sharks. Like, okay, cool. Oh, you know what? Now I think I'm going to start like, like trying to skateboard and drink like malt liquor at the park, Dad. Like, no, you're not. Look, I'm going to try, So, and then like, yeah, you're right. I found myself. I know who I'm really supposed to be. Like, it almost seems like this weird fluctuation as far as American ads go, like the way how it kind of goes up and down with it.
All I picture like, oh, little Billy thinks he's drinking malt liquor. Like, what's he doing? Well, he went to the hamburger stand and he asked to put malt in his, shake, and he thinks that that's what the liquor is.
Yeah. Don't tell
He's
him.
Like, I'm getting so wasted today on this chocolate shake. It's like, no, you just drank 3 chocolate shakes in a row. Anybody's gonna feel like that when they had that.
He thinks he's like,
I'm so wasted, man. I'm gonna go ride this skateboard right down the streets of San Francisco, throw it up along the way.
That'd be so cool. He thinks he's like the kid from mid '90s, but yeah. It's interesting in that aspect because kind of watching them all in a row like that and kind of just seeing the progression and then seeing how it kind of almost ends where it started, I actually kind of rewatched the Taco Bell ones just because those ones are, and I remember I made a joke with the Taco Bell one maybe like a few weeks ago, but the one where there's 2 of them. There's one where Mario and Donkey Kong, it's all CG, are racing down a Mario Kart. Donkey Kong knocks him off the side of the road, and then Mario lands in a Taco Bell like drive-through, and then he pulls like, oh, if you get a 64 on your cup or whatever, you get like I think last week or week before I said a Camry, but apparently it was a Porsche.
Yeah, it's a Porsche box.
So a bit of an upgrade, Yeah. Bit of an upgrade there. But anyway, then Mario comes by and rams fucking Donkey Kong off the road with a Porsche. And then there's another one where this one I fucking had down just almost beat for beat, where like the dad and the kid are fucking arguing and fighting for the fucking Donkey Kong toy. It goes out the window and the kid's like, you fucking ruined everything, Dad.
Oh, those ones are such good ones, and plus, like when I think of those, I just feel like the Score 64 was, but you got all those cool pogs that would come inside them. And like I said, I know I have a handful of those kind of left, and it's like that part's just such a neat thing of it, and so on like that to see those. And even speaking of Mario Kart, there's a Japanese Mario Kart commercial where it has like extremely good animation, like almost like kind of you're like, why wasn't this used in some form of like a Mario cartoon? Like it's just too good.
Is that there's a Mario 64 one that was really good, and I couldn't tell you.
This one's Mario Kart.
Yeah, Mario Kart 64.
Oh yeah.
There's a Mario Kart 64 one, and then there's a Mario Super Circuit one, and it was the same type of animation. And there's one where Mario, I want to say the Mario Kart 64 one is the one where it's kind of showing each character, and each character gets a quick little moment. But then there's a really badass one for Super Circuit, and where Mario is like rammed in like midair, and then he's falling down. Bowser comes around the corner, like drifting with like a superstar, knocks him further even back. Then Mario's like, motherfuckers, and like summons the lightning, shrinks them all, like, you're all fucking dead. It's Mario Kart Super Circuit.
Well, I remember like there was like this is a print ad, but when Super Circuit came out, there was one like a Nintendo Power where like it showed like it was like you saw Mario driving on like the wheel and so on, like a first person perspective, and it was almost like he was driving like a regular car, like a Mazda or something like that, and it had like, you know, like the regular buttons, and then all of a sudden it's like it was like when shit gets real, and there's like one to like launch a shell and a banana peel and all that kind of stuff.
I just like the idea, like you can, like in the new like in Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, you know, you can unlock a Mercedes Benz, you can unlock like, oh yeah, we got a Mazda, we got a Sundance, we got a Subaru Outback, you know,
we got Gremlin. Like, I feel like one of those ones where it's like all like the Matchbox cars version. You can just get any and every kind of like regular Joe car.
It's the most boring car. Like, oh, we got a Honda Civic. Like, oh, is it all like Fast and Furious out? No. It's actually it's retirement home beige. Like, oh, nice.
It's the car that Grandpa says don't put any more miles on it, you know, but he's 94. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So, but no, yeah, there is well, kind of, we talked about this for a second, I think, before we actually recorded, but there was there was some like the tie-in type ads you'd see for it. Like there was like a Mario, like for like whenever they had like a McDonald's thing, or like a tie, like early 90s stuff, like late 80s, early 90s. If there was like, even like this goes for Japan especially, but even America, there was like tie-in stuff for like, you know, like McDonald's or whatever like sweepstakes thing. And I feel like the animation of that kind of got the tone and vibe of Mario better than the actual Mario Super Show did. And we're thinking that as a kid, because at the time I would watch Super Show just because I was like, well, it's Mario, it's all we got, I'll take it, even knowing it wasn't that good. I was like, yeah, I guess I'll take it, you know. And then seeing some of the animation using the sound effects and the way they use it, and granted, it was just usually it would be one animated Mario in a live action world. He sneaks into a kid's like McDonald's bag, eats his food, and gets out of there. So they had so since it was so little, they were able to focus on what little they had. But I was like, God, the style, the way they animate him, the sound effects, they kind of get it more than the American cartoon did.
Yeah. I think like you think about if you only have to make a 30-second ad, you can put amazing animation to that. If you have to make a 30-minute show, 24 episodes or something like that, you know what I mean? You got cutting corners. So I kind of get that. That's where like I think that's why some of these like commercials have some really cool animation in it, because it's so short that you can put like a lot more effort and, you know, money into it. One thing, even speaking of those fast food tie-ins, I remember because I was watching the ones for like the McDonald's toys for the Mario 3, because I have a couple of, I have like the Luigi one and so on like that. And they had on the ad that said that like you could go in McDonald's and literally buy the toys for 59 cents, you know, which just makes it feel like that. I don't know what it is, but I hear like, you hear it like that, like, boy, when was the last time you heard the word cents?
Yeah.
But the thing I thought too is because when I was a kid, those places like Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King, all that stuff would always have the cool figures or something like that. And I literally remember being as a kid, like asking them, like, hey, can I just buy the rest of the toys you have from there? And so then the guys would be like, oh, no, you know, they got to come with the Happy Meal. And it's like, I almost felt as a kid, I'm like, I don't want your shitty food. I just want the toy, and that's it. Can't you just give me what I got? I have, you know what I mean? Like, you know, like, to keep forcefully coming here and getting a random toy, or if you're Taco Bell, where they do like the cheap thing where like they only put a new toy out like every like week or two, so they forcefully would make you keep coming back in to get the next one.
Like, I'm 6 years old, it's 1994, you have no idea what I had to do to get $10 in my hands right now, okay? Just give me the fucking shit, you know? So I pay your fucking salary.
Trying to get these damn toys.
Well, I remember, God, yeah, I didn't. I mean, I remember the Mario because that was also the point where they only had 4, and now they they could have like, oh, we have 10, we have 15, we have whatever. That was at a time where they only had like 4. I remember the Mario 3 ones were a big deal because it was Mario, and you basically be on like the little like. He basically be on this little like suction cup thing. Get pushed down, he kind of hops up. Mm-hmm. There is like the paratroopa where it had this little pump thing where he kind of hops. Luigi was like a pullback thing on like a cloud, and he'd move. And then there is a Goomba where he basically kind of bend over. He had a little suction cup thing on his chin, and he'd flip around. And I remember these came out at a time where it's hard to come across Mario stuff. And we've said this before, like maybe last week or a week before, where Mario stuff was not readily available or all that common. So if McDonald's or whoever had like a toy line, well, that was the closest thing you're probably going to find to like a readily available Mario toy for a while. So it's a big deal if you got one. Now, this isn't like, granted, I may have been, maybe, I'll just whatever. So there's this kid that lived across the street from me. And we didn't really like each other that much, but we just kind of hung out just because, well, we were the only kids in the street that were around the same age that could hang out. So we just kind of tolerated each other's presence. And he didn't really like Mario that much. He didn't really give a shit for Mario. But he happened to have that acrobatic Goomba thing and the idea of like, oh, that's a Mario toy. And he doesn't like it. He doesn't really give a shit about Mario. And I asked him like, hey, man, is it cool if I have this Goomba or whatever? The kid immediately starts breaking down crying and runs to his dad, screaming, like, he asked if he could have this. And his dad, who in hindsight looked like Jeffrey fucking Dahmer, turns like, excuse me, that's a very rude thing to do. And I would have traded him for it. I asked if I could have it, but I could trade him something for it. Like, you don't do that. Like, okay. All right, cool. This guy's gonna fucking kill me. I know he is, So just
it's such a fun lesson because it's like, well, how do you get anything in life when you get older? You literally start having to ask and buy for it. You know what I mean? There's just those things like that where people would get weird about that, but it's like that's what you have to do. If you want something, you literally have to ask or buy for it or trade for it. But I remember as a kid, like if you did want something, that was like what you did. Your mind raced through of like, okay, what are the things that I can do to get this? Like, how can I trade it? How can I sort of work it off? How can you go through all these things of figuring out how you can get it, because it's like you can't just always go out and get these things. Even if you had the money, you can't just go back to the store and get them, or these things were limited time things and so on. We didn't have internet where you could go on eBay and find it. You know what I mean? So you did like literally have to like sleuth your way out to figure out how you were going to get a hold of this. And then if you were getting real conny, you might be like, maybe I'll just have to trick him.
As you're saying this, I'm imagining kind of like a young Spencer Scott Holmes when he was like 7, like, hey, like some kids like, hey, I think someone lost their Gambit figure. And like a slow zoom in on your face, like Heartbreaker by Rolling Stones. Do, Heartbreaker. And that's when I realized, no, nothing in life was going to give me that Gambit. I had to take that Gambit for myself. Like, oh, that was totally me. Was you? Yeah. And from that moment onward, I knew who I was and what I had to do to get by in this world. Then cuts like a Martin Scorsese style montage.
That is a little close to home because I use those exact words for a Green Lantern action figure at about age 7 years old. Somebody's like, hey, someone lost a Green Lantern figure. I'm like, oh, mine, because I knew I needed it for my Justice League collection. So I just said that was mine that I lost there, and I still have it to this day. It literally did. And even when I was even younger, like when I was in preschool, I used to wear like this Bing Crosby hat around, and I had this fake.
Like it's like a hat like Bing Crosby would wear, or just a hat that had like Bing Crosby. Like, hey kids.
No. It was like a hat that Bing Crosby, a style hat he would wear. Right. But I do love the idea of Bing Crosby Club. 2 thumbs up for some reason.
1992.
That was the hip thing to wear then. But and I literally had these gold rocks. I can't remember exactly where I got them from, but they were just rocks that were paying gold. But I conned the other kids in preschool saying that these were actual gold and used them as bartering tools.
So you're just doing some nitty shit from like an early age.
I was been like, hey, you know what? It's a dog-eat-dog world out there, and I gotta survive.
Now I'm just thinking,
just walking around on like 1940s. Hey, honey, what are you doing tonight? I got a pack of gold here in my pockets. I mean, why don't you say you and me get out of this preschool?
I got a sack of spray painted gold. The town is ours.
Yeah, these guys here, I mean, they're all from the sticks. They don't know any better. I mean, we can have them in the palm of our hands. Could you imagine the power there?
We could have the power of a Game Boy in our hands with this right here.
Before I didn't think I was going to be someone who would be able to afford a Game Boy, but now with these rocks and this gold paint, the power will be ours. Now we will be playing with power.
From that day, years later, he ruled that town with an iron fist. Yes. It's just like that would just kind of like, dark future from Back to the Future, where like Biff controls shit. It all started with this. It's like on a fucking pedestal, just a pile of spray painted rocks.
Still use them to trade to this day.
You fucking followed for it. I don't know why. They fucking learn.
Yeah. They don't want pyrite, but boy, they love spray painted gold rocks. Ironically, I probably got them somewhere because it must have been like St. Patrick's Day or something like that. If had to guess, because that's what it is about right now. So that probably was where it all came from. Is they're handing them out at some kind of parade or something silly like that, and then I just took them, said, "Oh, I know where I can put that. I can trade these decks." Like literally, like that thing where, you're like, I'm building up my bartering system here. Travel around, to a place where they don't know what this is, and go from there.
I know they're probably just like throwing like little sacks out to kids from like a float or whatever, but I like to imagine they're just like dropping like pebbles from like a 3-story thing onto the people below. Like there's an episode of Simpsons when Mr. Burns is like, we got to give money to people. He's like pouring buckets of coins from like 5 stories up down on all the citizens.
Like, my eye! I'm not supposed to get coins in there. Yeah, exactly. It's something like that. Or back in the day, you remember just in parades when they used to be able to throw candy? I think about that every single time I see a parade, and I go, there used to be a time period that you could just literally chuck candy out, and children would just run into the streets and try to catch them all. And then I think what probably happened is realize that
each other to get the shit.
Well, there's that, but then it got really like, okay, one, we got horses that really have no idea what's going on right now. There's old people that are like 90 years old driving cars out here that something, at any moment could forget which one's the gas and which one's the brake. They're like, we can't have children running. And plus, children are literally like eating off the filthy ground when you really think about it. It's like, oh, it's just drop acres. Throw them out in the ground. No wrapper or anything.
One kid just grabbed like another kid, like Reese's coming out of his mouth, just going all feral,
No, there's Johnny. No, Johnny is like his mom's like, that's just gum someone spit out on the street like 5 years ago.
I'll take whatever I can get.
Yeah, just like peeling.
I'm not leaving empty-handed, Ma.
But even speaking kind of Bing Crosby, did you watch that Super Mario Land commercial that had like the 1950s kind of theme to it?
No, but that reminds me of something. Well, I'll circle back to my thing in a second. But I didn't see the Bing. It's like a Casablanca. You said Bing Crosby. But
well, no. Yeah, I said it because it kind of just goes back to that time period. Really, what it was almost like a 50s, like sort of sci-fi feel to it. But it was like Super Mario Land, coming at you again, and for some reason, I had these aliens sort of invading, like almost like an Ed Wood movie. And then, it would cut to like gameplay footage and then come back. And then it'd be like, it would literally be all black and white. And it would show like, like almost like old timey people like driving in a car, like as a getaway thing, like and even when you get the girl and everything like that, with like almost rear projection footage. And it was just kind of weird because it's like that kind of marketing thing where granted it's a style, but it does almost have that feeling like, who the hell they have been like appeal this to?
I honestly think that was at a point where we don't get the next generation, but the next generation has probably seen TV Land or probably seen like shit their parents watch. So we can kind of go off that because if you think about, and we'll get back to Nintendo in a second, but you think about like the way they marketed like Dragon Ball Z figures, because you think about it for a second, they were the Japanese molds, but they were an American company that repackaged them or whatever. And they're like, you know, what the fuck's these? What are the fuck are these things? What's a Go Cow? What's a Go Hane? What's a Frieza? What the fuck are we selling, man? Like, I don't know. It's some shit from Japan. Yeah, all right. Well, tell you what, we know this shit's not going to sell. Give him a 1940s Tommy gun. But the hands aren't really made to hold a Tommy gun. Give him a 1940s Tommy gun. Like, all right, if you say so. And it's just like, because they would give him like guns and shit that weren't even in the fucking show. So that tells me it was probably somebody who's like, I don't know what this shit is, but we got to sell it to kids. I liked my G.I. Joe shit when I was a kid. So these kids are going to like that. So I'm guessing there's something kind of like that, similar to like Mario in some aspects. It's like, well, I mean, we don't know what these fucking kids want. We don't understand this Mario shit. So let's just kind of make it sort of what we know, but kids probably know it to an extent just because, like I said, their parents watch, which was true. Back then you'd watch a lot of what your parents watched.
Yeah, I think that's almost like one of the biggest differences I notice about kids today and when we grew up is that we kind of grew up in an age where like you literally had a very good like catch up of like history. Like I felt like in a sense, like, I mean, I'm not saying there's not kids that didn't do it, but like it was very common to watch stuff from 40s all the way up to the 90s in the 90s. Like none of that stuff, it all felt like it kind of came as a package deal where I think kids this day and age, like if it's older than like 2017, they're not watching it. Like Dark Knight's probably getting too old for them nowadays. Like that weird kind of like, you know, I mean, I think it's also because there's so much shit to watch. Where back in the day, you turn the TV on, and granted, whatever was on, you know, at 9 o'clock is what you're watching, and your choices was between 100 channels, and you know, or you know, if you only had antenna, it was between 3 channels or so. If you're lucky, some UHF ones, but like that kind of, in a sense, I guess, forced you to watch it. Like nowadays, I guess there's so much modern shit that you technically are almost overwhelmed by that. You might not even watch the old stuff.
Yeah, well, it's also something to that point, like you'd always prefer, you always have a preference to things for your own generation as opposed to stuff your parents would watch, but you at least were aware of it. Or, it's like, okay, Hey Arnold's over, and I Love Lucy's on, so I guess I'm watching that,
Yeah.
So it was kind of like, it wasn't like, okay, I guess I'm watching this. You watch it enough, you kind of like, maybe you kind of got into it or just became part of your habit. But, and that kind of that kind of mentality, I think, is very reflective of a lot of the advertising, even in Mario and Nintendo stuff. There's one particular campaign ad that I was noticing with Mario. It was particularly Mario All-Stars, and that was kind of like a couple of things. Mario All-Stars ads did one of two things. They did this thing where it was like the kind of wacky, like, Mario All-Stars. There's the one that's like, I can't remember. It's moving so rapid fast. Like Lizard Boy loves Mario All-Star. Mario, just like this really fast, rapid shit of like, watch Mario create world peace. Watch Mario do this. Like all these fast things. And it's just this really over the top funny ad. But then they had these ones where it's like, it was almost trying to be like, I forget what it's called, but when you're looking through like the coupons or the bargain section of the newspaper and all that kind of shit, they're like, it was like, 4 Mario All-Star ads, you get 4 Mario All-Stars you can get for the price of 1 right here. And they made it look like little coupon cutout things, or like kind of like those Sunday. There was like 3 or 4 ads that were like around that area that just seemed like it was more of kind of like down at the local like fairgrounds, kind of like had that vibe. Or there's even one where it was like when they were pitching the Super Nintendo coming with Mario All-Stars, they presented it like a car commercial. It was like a tacky salesman coming out in a wacky suit, but he was a giant Super Nintendo there, and he says, comes with not 1 but 4 games, cutting that price down, doing those old tacky used car sales ads, which that just seemed like a weird, like you knew of it, you saw it on TV enough, but it was just like, I mean, it just, I got it even as a kid, but in hindsight, like it just seems like a really weird strategy.
Well, I guess it's one of those ones like it's just a straight up, you're just parroting the cars that are on TV. Like, I mean, if you're down at the advertising, they're like, hey, what if we just sort of parodied like a car ad, but we did this for selling a Super Nintendo? But it's just kind of bizarre because it's like you're selling something so different.
Snake oil salesman.
Yeah, yeah, it's certain ones are. Makes me think there was this was an ad that I thought was actually kind of bizarre, especially bizarre for it was an English ad. It was kind of bizarre for that. One for, I think it was for Mario Advance, so Super Mario 2. It was literally a gun range, which are like, like in England, like I guess handguns weren't outlawed yet. So well, the first thing I thought, like as that's going by, and it's like they're just blasting away at bam, 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 and all of a sudden it shows one guy and he's just throwing turnips like at a target, like an angry man and whatnot, like that. It was actually kind of funny. I was like, that's actually pretty clever right there, and stuff. And then it was just like like Mario 2, Advance, whatever, like learn to throw shit, as it's going on. And then I remember it cut to the American version of it. The American version was fucking weird. It was like an airport, and it was literally just a guy like running through an airport throwing shit that he was picking up like anywhere on there, like suitcases and briefcases. And it's like, you can pick up, items to throw at enemies, and then you can pick up people. And it literally shows him like throw at your enemies more. And it was just like, this is really, it felt like it's like sometimes there's that kind of thing where like, don't be hindsight. I love the weirder ads are better for like nostalgic reasons and just funny things to see in there. But like at the time, when you can't think about like, just show fucking Mario footage and like there you go. Like that's all anybody wants to see is like, hey, here's Mario. It's on Game Boy. Game that you love from Mario All Stars now in a Game Boy form. Hook it up with 4 hours to play Mario Brothers old school. Boom.
Yeah. Well, there's also what was the other one I was thinking of? It's another weird one, kind of in a similar ballpark. Shit, it escapes me. That's weird. You watch so many, you kind of forget like there's no way I'm forgetting this one. Like shit, you forget it, Well,
that's the thing is that they started running together as time went on. That was the one thing I kind of felt, and it was just like, holy crap, you could sit here for days and just kind of watch commercials, which I do think that one of the things I've said before, it's like, it's that weird thing. Like nowadays, I hate commercials generally. Like if I can pay to not have commercials, I'm 100% down. I don't care. It's like, get those out of here. They're like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, and even like services that have commercials where they kind of forcefully, it's like, I think it's almost like the main reason I never use Instagram very often is I hate that because there's like a commercial like every 2, panel you go down. It's like, it's so annoying. There's like an oversaturated amount of that. But it's that thing that like, oh, here's some commercials from the 80s and 90s. Like, shit, you could play that for the next 3 hours.
Well, it's just that it's the ultimate. I mean, I was listening to you and Wes are doing the new show, Retro 88. Is that what it's called?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was listening to you guys talk about that, and I was thinking about that. Like, yeah, even though, I mean, old retro commercials is kind of like instant. Like even if you don't remember that ad or didn't see that ad back then, just the tone and vibe, you automatically know where you're at when you see that, and it just could teleport you back. Sometimes more than a movie, because you could watch a movie over and over, and maybe that movie could send you back. But an ad, it's something you don't watch frequently, so when you do see it, it does have that immediate trigger.
Well, that and ads have like they're very much time capsule-y, I think, than like movies and so on. Like, not saying that a movie can't be like, oh, the movie's like one of those ones like, oh, that feels very like 80s, but like an ad can be like, oh, that feels like 1984. Like, you know what I mean? Like, exactly, you can almost pinpoint the year it is and so on. Like in an ad, like there's just things about so on like that, which I think is what makes it kind of cool. And it's that one that like you could even watch 2000s ads because we're watching some of these Mario ones here and so on like that, and they still just like they take you back, and like you don't think like the 2000s was that far ago, but it's kind of amazing when you look at things like that and it's like, oh no, that definitely feels way different. It's even like certain movies, like especially when you watch like early, like they now don't have that modern feel like they once did. You're like, oh shit, that does feel kind of old now in a sense. And like, it takes me back to that time period. And there's a certain look that nobody really kind of thought about like at the moment, but it definitely is there.
at a first glance, the movie looks relatively fairly modern. But thinking back on it, I have to remind myself. Back when Dark Knight came out, I had a MySpace page. I have to remind myself of that. And I remember somewhere in that it wasn't my profile picture, but somewhere in that MySpace page was a picture of Heath Ledger Joker. Wasn't the profile picture. I wasn't one of those guys, but it's one of those things like shit. Yeah, I guess that was 2008 was a while ago. It wasn't recent. But going off what you said about that, because this is even like, I guess this would have been like 99 or 2000, maybe 98, probably more close to 99. Smash Brothers ad, because I feel like even though that's not Mario proper, it still is more Mario than it is probably anything else.
Yeah.
And that first ad, that is that 90s attitude era, but that also is totally encapsulating the time. Like, okay, we got to prove that we're not just some shit for like, babies and like toddlers. Okay. So yeah, we're going to have the funny mascot costumes, but they're going to be beating the fuck out of each other, and how they're going to, like, not only that, we're going to spend some money. We're going to play the Turtles Happy Together. All right.
Yeah, it's like you got that all coming together. You got the mascots. They play the turtle song over there, which that also is another example of like, because once again, I feel like 90s kids kind of had more of a connection to like the past than like other things. So like you got the 60s reference and all that stuff. It all kind of came together and so on. Cool commercial with the mascots beating each other up, kicking the shit out of each other and everything like that. Like I really think that Smash Brothers ad, and this might be a little bit more nostalgic talking, but that's probably my favorite one of them all. I think that when they had the mascot kind of era, which is like the late 90s to like the early 2000s, where they were using those mascots for a lot of the games, I think there's a lot of cool stuff right there. I think there's just some good, funny commercials.
Even like the Crash Bandicoot, even those Crash Bandicoot talking shit to Nintendo the whole time, but that's basically what they do. They have some asshole in a Crash costume, like talking shit to Nintendo HQ. Yeah,
just standing out like side Nintendo Washington, just like a megaphone.
That's the thing. Like you think Mario's up there like Don Corleone, like take this motherfucker out.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, is because like we live right now where like there's supposed to be absolutely no conflict. If you hit someone, you say bad words to anyone, you say anything against somebody, all this stuff is like, it's almost like in a weird way untolerated, which it makes the night, like, that there's probably children look back at the night, it must just look like primitive Mad Max times or something like that. Like, you know what I mean? It's like back then it was like, no. You insult people, you make them drink shit when you beat their ass in a fucking game, like all this stuff here, like take no fucking prisoners, fuck the other guy, choose your side, know your role, like all that kind of stuff is like all these things that like 90s kids were raised. It's like the complete opposite for like that next generation. Like we come into a world where like we almost don't even fit in anymore because like it's so radically different.
Well, I don't even think that, like, I'll say this, like, I don't even think like 90s, don't take it as me being like, this generation is a bunch of soft-spined pussies. Don't take it as that. I do think, though, there is this thing like, there's some stuff I that's just a little bit more like, I don't know. I mean, how do I put it? Like, I don't think the 90s is as like tough and like fucking you got blisters on your fucking knuckles, man. You didn't every day you walked to school was a fucking battle. They were coming for your fucking pogs, but you had to fucking fight to the well, yeah, it wasn't that. But at the same time, I kids still get into fights at school and all that. But I feel like there's something in the ads where there was like this weird pushback, and maybe it's because of hip hop, maybe it's because of grunge, maybe it was because of like, like leftover of punk rock movement from the 80s and all that. Or like not punk rock movement of the 80s,
like hardcore, heavy metal and hardcore.
Heavy metal, yeah, like left over from that, and that I feel like there was a little bit more of this like, mom and dad just don't get it. You want some Rice Krispies? Psych, So I feel like that right there kind of just made, I don't know, it kind of comes in waves. I think almost like to a certain, not everything, but to a certain period, I think shittiness was almost presented as like a fun, wacky character trait, even though you're really just an entitled, like suburban kid with no fucking real issues, you know? And but at the same time, though, I feel like, but you're still kind of extreme though, because you know you wear a backwards baseball cap, you know. So
and a flannel, like you're a working, like you're a blue collar working man. But let's be honest,
you don't got no fucking blisters or a job yet, you know? So I feel like there is like a little bit of this like kind of aesthetic, like this like, you know, grimier, tougher aesthetic that was sold to our generation that if I had to be 100% honest, yeah, I like that aesthetic a lot more because it's the aesthetic I grew up with. Mm-hmm. It's just more interesting to me. But at the same time, like I'm not going to pretend like I know about the new generation. There's, yeah. It is what it is, you know. I think it's more just like the way shit's advertised to us and presented to us, really.
Yeah, well, it's definitely just much different. Like things are just. I wonder if it's almost because you think about it, like the people putting together all these ads are a bunch of like ex-hippie kind of people, and I wonder if there's that weird thing where they're like, you know what? We had extreme conflict of like the generations in the 60s and, you know, into the like 70s and so on like that, like. How can we do the same thing with like almost like it's created conflict? Like, can we do the same thing in the 90s and make it seem like it's so radically different? You know, like it's almost like forcefully different more than, even though ironically, I feel there's like in the 90s, there's a lot more connection, like in like that era. It's not like there's that with like, oh yeah, like I like Jimi Hendrix. The boy likes Jim. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like that's like the 90s, like where like before it was like, well, those wasn't like that wasn't the same way. It wasn't like, you know, old Grandpa Wilheimer was like, you know, like Jimi Hendrix, a hippie up there on stage doing the drugs and playing a guitar like an animal with his teeth. Like, well, that's not music. You know, we need Bob and the Four Champs or whatever. That's real tunes.
we need Big Bopper and the Butt Boys or whatever. I don't know. Just,
you know, the old Butt Boys.
You know what he'd do? Not only was his music good, it was respectful. He would stop on Saturday nights. He would stop at 8:30 to make sure everyone got home safe, didn't drive drunk, so they can go to church the next day. And that's what he did. And after every show, for the real edgy kids out there, he'd stay up late and talk about the importance of why marriage is between a man and a woman. All right. That was real music, I tell you what, you know. So, but the thing is, I'm wondering, because you mentioned like you had all these like, you know, ex-hippies and people from like, you know, a different generation trying to make like, how do we reach out to the 90s, you know, like, well, we went through some shit, you know, they look up like, I mean, probably wasn't someone this young, but like this old, but like Pop-Tarts. Then he looks up at the wall. There's like a Black Panther, like fight the power poster. He's like, I got something. Mom and Dad just don't get it. Like, yeah, we're gonna fine tune this shit.
Like that's what I sometimes kind of wonder is like, is it sort of like marketed to create almost more conflict than there really is? You know.
I think just to make people remember or just stand out, because it was always like, oh, I'll cut you off. Sorry, delay.
You know, because it's that weird thing that like, because there is that weird thing like, you know, in the 90s you always felt like you had to pick these sides, you know, whether it be Nintendo, Sega, WCW, WWF, all those kind of, it's like, I know for myself, it's like, I like having everything, like, you know what I mean? Like I rather be like, you know, why choose when you can have all the power? Like I feel like you get that, like you literally get like the conqueror, like the winner of Risk kind of feeling in life. Like what? Take sides. That's like saying that like, hey, you can have North America, I'll have Africa, my buddy can have Asia. Fuck that. I want the whole world. You know what I mean? Like I all down on your knee. Rule you over with my plastic figurines.
You talking about Risk for the people born after 2000 in the audience.
There's a Risk game on PS5. I look anything like, you know, the 1700s that we grew up with, but
like I'm just imagining like, because
for all our French viewers that remember Risk, I can't remember what it's called over there, but that's where it was invented.
I know we're by this point we're just talking about advertising in general as opposed to Nintendo or Mario, but I feel like we're about to wrap it up here soon anyway. But I do feel like there was this thing because where in the '90s it was just kind of like for what I've seen for ads in like the '60s and '70s, it wasn't like this whole like crazy. Maybe it was there's revolutionary shit for the time, you know, like oh my god, there's an Asian person in this ad. Can you believe it? How scandalous, you know? But like,
oh, he's doing kung fu. That seems about right.
but like, there's something like to where it's like oh, well, this is Jenny. She's a good woman. She's at home making dinner for her husband the way it fucking should be, you know? And then you get something like, you know, like, here's mom and dad. They're fucking stupid. Yeah, they pay the bills, but they don't know how to live. They don't know the real style. LA Lights. You know, some shit like that. Like, you know, like, okay, well, who's going to pay for it? Yeah, they're still fucking stupid, you know? That's kind of like the thing. Like, parents were, it was always just like, you know, if we insult your parents enough, maybe they'll buy the shit for you.
Well, that's the thing is like the 90s is just filled with like the generation insulting was okay, like in a weird way. Like that was kind of not saying that people like necessarily believe that all the way around, of course, you know, but like marketing and from a television point of view and an ad point of view that insulting that's what it was all about, you know. Shit, even Disney jumped on that train. It's like it's funny, like when you think about like most people would imagine that, but like Disney, I remember had like these, I had a folder that came from like some, I don't know, Disney promo for school or whatnot, but it literally had things like giving out like insults in there, and it had something that was almost like, even as a child, I was like, oh, this is actually really fucked up. It was like, it said, what is your favorite bug to smash? And I was like, that's almost like one, that's like literally, that is very close to saying like, what's your favorite genocide? You know what I mean? Like, it's like that close to there. It's like, let's be honest. I know people put bugs in like a lesser category, but at the end of the day, in my book, everybody's in an equal plane. You know what I mean? If you're going to kill one thing, you might as well kill everything because it's no different. So I felt the fact in there like bothered me as a kid. I literally was like, I'm not using this folder. How can I trust this mouse anymore? I'm 6 years. Mouse is already telling me to go out and murder.
In the name of the mouse,
kill the dirty bugs.
Kill enough of them, you'll find a nice comfy spot on the compound. The compound? Yes. Once the reckoning has begun, you'll be safe on the compound. Like, oh shit, Mickey's gone. Okay, Mickey. Well, is there tickets? Is there free tickets to Disneyland? Of course, there's fucking free tickets to Disneyland. All right. Let me get a hammer. Let's get this shit rolling.
You know me. I do like free. So what do I gotta do again? Kill? Okay, sure, I got it. No big deal.
I just gotta smush some bugs. We're starting with bugs. Okay, we'll work from there.
Yeah, work your way up. But yeah, it was fun to go through this nostalgic journey of commercials, you know, and in that weird way that it is to go back and watch commercials, like, you know, it's just that thing that like nobody ever thinks like, hey, you know what people are gonna do in the future? They're gonna go back and watch old timey commercials. But it is one of those ones, like there's something about taking that time trip back that is just a very neat thing, and something that like I've kind of wanted to podcast on for a good while. I know that me and Wes on via VHS have always mentioned like watching old, like, you know, 70s, 80s, and 90s commercials on things and so on. And I just feel like that's just a cool, fun thing to do. I'm like, yeah, Mario, it's something different. I mean, we've done a lot of Mario podcasts. I'm like, and we're always trying to find like, hey, let's do something that's kind of a little bit more radically different. I'm like, Mario, and I think the commercials was a fun one to go back to.
Yeah, it was kind of a little like shot of nostalgia. I mean, Mario is always a little bit of a shot of nostalgia, but going back and looking at ads I haven't seen since I was like in the 4th grade or even younger, it's like, oh shit, I forgot about this one. It did kind of just almost immediately take you back, not just to like seeing this ad, but oh yeah, it's about the old family living room I was in at that time or whatever, you know?
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it builds a whole picture and then, you know, a place around you and so on that you remember. And I think that's almost what makes it pretty darn neat. But yeah, beyond all that good stuff, for more podcasts, comic books like Pizza Boys, old animations and videos, and all that fun stuff. We got more Mario madness coming from Mario March here as we get closer and closer to the next Mario movie. But till then, I'm Spencer Scott Holmes.
And I'm Ryan Dunnigan.
And we'll see you some other time.
Later, folks.